Understanding the Pythagorean Theorem, Lesson 12. We're going to go over some of the vocabulary that you're going to need to know. If I can find my highlighter, we will. Okay. A right triangle. Right triangles will always have a right angle. It's a triangle that contains one right angle. The edge opposite of the right angle is called your hypotenuse. So right across the right angle is your hypotenuse. The other sides of the triangle are called the legs. Okay, so you really have to understand that when you find the right angle, this is your hypotenuse and these are your legs. The legs are connected by the right triangle or the right angle. The great mathematician Pythagoras discovered a unique relationship that existed among the lengths of the sides of a right triangle. The relationship is known as the Pythagorean Theorem. And again, it only works with right triangles. The Pythagorean Theorem states, if a triangle is a right triangle with the legs of lengths A and B and a hypotenuse of length C, then A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, that's a little difficult to read, but that is your formula that you're going to use. You can use the model below to verify Pythagorean theorem. The number of squares units on each side of the triangle represents the square of the length of the side of the triangle. Count the squares to verify that the sum of the unit squares on the legs is equal to the number of unit squares on the hypotenuse. So, we have 3 units on this leg. This is my leg, and this is my leg, because they are connected by the right angle. We have 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4 units on this leg. Your hypotenuse is directly across your right angle. So this is your hypotenuse. And our formula that we read up here is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And our legs are A and B. Your legs will connect to the right angle. So A squared will be 3 squared plus your other leg, which is 4 squared. And then that shall equal 5 squared. Now, let's test it out. 3 squared is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. And then 4 squared is 16. Remember, you're just going to do 4 times 4. That's what your exponent says. Equals 5 squared. So this is 5 times 5, which would be 25. And if you take 16 and add 9, it's going to be 25 equals 25. When you have a model here, we can count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 squares. 3 squared was 9. 4 squared was 16. And we said that equaled 25 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So the model shows you how he come up with this theory. But sometimes we don't know the length of our C or our A or B. And we'll have to find the problem for that, find the solution for that problem. when you reverse the parts of an if-then statement, the new statement is called the converse of the original statement. Here is a converse of the Pythagorean theorem. If a triangle sides of lengths A and B, whose longest side of length C, and A squared plus B squared equals C squared, then the triangle is a right triangle. For this to work, it must be a right triangle. And here, example 1 is your right angle. So across from your right angle is your hypotenuse. Attaching to the right angle is your legs. And it's going to show you down here, but A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And A and B are your legs. It doesn't matter which leg you put first, but these have to be your legs. The longest side has to be your hypotenuse. So 12 squared plus 5 squared equals 13 squared. So 12 squared is 144 plus 5 squared is 25. And if you add that together, you should get 169, which 13 squared is 169. Double check. Okay, and that's what they got. So if you didn't have this right angle in here, you could put the numbers in the formula, and if it didn't equal, then it was not a right triangle. All right, let's start on some practice problems. Lee wants to cut a right triangle out of fabric for a craft project. Which of the following lengths could be the side lengths of a triangle? So again, you would use A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So the longest side is always your C, so 8 squared plus 15 squared equals 17 squared. And you put that in your calculator to see if it's true. Well, that would be 64 plus 225 equals 289. And if you'll do that, you'll see that this one actually is your answer. Now, if you work all of these, you're going to find out it will not equal your C squared. Okay, so that's up to y'all if you want to work it out. We can quickly do it with the next one just to show you. So it'll be 4 squared plus 5 squared equals 6 squared. 4 squared is 16 plus 5 squared, 25. 6 squared is 36. Does 16 plus 25 equal 36? No. So it didn't work out. So this is not a right triangle. And if you want to do the math, you can keep doing it. But we did find our answer. But on a test, I would probably go through the process of elimination. You can use calculators in 8th grade, so this really isn't that hard. All right, number 2. Which of the following does the diagram below illustrate? Okay, so remember we talked about this. There's your legs because it is attached to your right angle. And your hypotenuse would be right here. And when we squared this and squared this side, it's going to equal the squared length of this side. So let's read our problems. The sum of the areas of the two smaller squares is less than the area of the largest square. So think about what that's saying. The sum of the two smaller squares, so if you add up the two smaller squares, it's going to be less than the area of the largest square. No, when you add them up, they're going to equal each other. So it's not less than. B, the sum of the area of the two smaller squares is greater than the area of the larger square. No. The length of the longest side, which is your hypotenuse, which is right here, equals the sum of the lengths of the sides of the two smaller squares. The length of the longest side, the triangle, equals the sum of the length. No, we're not just adding the lengths up. So that one's a no. D, the sum of the areas of the two smaller squares equals the area of the largest square. So your answer is D. And if we were to work this out, we would count the units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squared plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squared equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squared. And if you worked it out, you're going to find out that that is true. Okay, number 3. Nicholas places his 30-foot ladder against a house he is painting. I always like to draw these things out. So here's your house. I'm not an artist. He's going to place his 30-foot ladder against the house he is painting. The foot of the ladder is 8 feet from the base of the house. So from here to here is 8. And the ladder itself is 30 foot. The nearest tenth of a foot, how high above the ground is the top of the ladder where it touches the house? So we want to find this. We want to find A. So we're having to work backwards here. Let's write the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is what we don't know. We're trying to find it. B squared is 8 squared. And the 30-foot ladder is your hypotenuse. 8 squared is 64. And we're going to use some solving for an equation here. 30 squared would be 900. And I want to solve for A. So we're going to move the whole numbers together. Subtract 64 from both sides. You'll get A squared equals 836. But that's not my answer. Because it's an A square, we have to unsquare it. Find the square root. So when you unsquare it, it becomes A equals 28.91. But we are rounding to the nearest tenth. So 28.9. So this one, we had to discover what the leg was, which is fine because we know how to solve for our variables using our through the equations. Number 4. 2 lengths of 2 sides of a triangle are 5 feet and 12 feet. The angle between them is an obtuse angle. What can be said of the length of the third side of the triangle? So it's an obtuse angle. And remember, our formula works for right angles. So let's go ahead and use our formula that I'm going to explain. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And we know it's 5 feet and 12 feet. So 5 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. 5 squared is 25 plus 12 squared, which is 144, equals c squared. And they equal 169 equals c squared. But remember, this isn't our answer because we don't leave our variable with a square on it. You have to find the square root. So 13 equals c. Now this would be if it was a right triangle. Okay, and it told us it was an obtuse triangle. Remember, obtuse triangle would actually make it larger. Let's use a different color pen. So if this angle was an obtuse angle, that would be my new triangle. Okay, so let's read our questions. It is equal to 13 feet. This one is, but it's not, it's an obtuse angle, not a right angle. So this one is incorrect. It is greater than 13 feet. When you open up the obtuse angle, you made it larger. So that made your hypotenuse larger. So it would have to be greater than 13. That one's looking pretty good. C, it is less than 13 feet. Well, you had the right angle and you made it less. You shortened it. It means your triangle would be not a 90 degrees anymore. And your hypotenuse would be shorter. So it can't be that. It is between 5 and 12. No, because it always has to be the longer side. So can't be that one. So your answer is B. Number 5. Danella needs to cut a rectangular hole in a wall where her new window will be installed. The window, okay, so we have our window, will be 4.5 feet high and 3.5 feet wide. To the nearest tenth of a foot, what is the distance between the opposite corners of the window? So they're wanting us to find the opposite corners of the window. They're wanting us to find the hypotenuse. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 4.5 squared plus 3.5 squared equals c squared. 4.5 squared is 12.25 plus 3.5 squared is 20.25 equals c squared. We add those together, you're going to get 32.5 equals c squared. But that is not our answer. We have to find c. And you would have to find the square root of 32.5, which would be 5.7. So your answer is C. It really is following the formula and making sure you know which one's your legs and which one's your hypotenuse. Number 6. A supportive wire is attached to a utility pole at a point 4 feet below the top of the pole. Okay, so we have a pole, a utility pole, and the wire is 4 feet below. So here's our wire, and we know that's 4 feet. 4 feet below the top. The wire is anchored to a stake on the level ground at 10 feet away from the base. Here's your base. So 10 feet away, your wire is anchored. If the wire is 26 feet long, how tall is the utility pole? Ooh, How tall is the whole pole? So what we're going to find out is this part, but then you have to add it to the 4. Okay, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 10 squared plus b squared, because this is your b, this is your a, and this is your hypotenuse, equals 26 squared. 10 squared is 100 plus b squared. 26 squared is 676. And again, I want to get my whole numbers together. We're solving for b. Subtract 100 from both sides. B squared equals 576, but that is not our answer. Find the square root. B equals 24. And you'll notice they have 24 as an answer, but that's not your answer. How tall is the utility pole? So from here to here is 24. You're going to have to add this extra 4 feet. So your answer is going to be 28 feet. Number 7. The lengths of two sides of a right triangle are 11 inches and 15 inches. To the nearest tenth of an inch, what could be the length of the third side of the triangle? So we have 11 and 15. What can be that side? So let's solve this one. And it just said two sides of a right triangle. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It just says two sides. We really don't know which sides they are. We just know it's two of them are going to be 11 and 15. So we're going to do this both ways. So 11 squared plus 15 squared equals c squared. 11 squared is 121 plus 15 squared, 225 equals c squared. This equals 346 c squared. And if you unsquare them, you're going to get 18.6. Now that's one possible way. Okay, because it doesn't say what two sides. It could be the longest side, could be the shorter side. It could be a leg, or could be the hypotenuse. We assumed it was the hypotenuse over here. So, but because it doesn't say that, we're going to try the other way too. So I am leaning toward this not being your answer. So let's do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And let's just say 15 is our hypotenuse. Just say. So we can do 11 squared plus b squared equals 15 squared. 11 squared is 121 plus b squared. 15 squared is 225. We've got to get our whole numbers together. Isolate b. Negative 121, subtract 121, b squared equals 104. We are not done. You have to find the square root. So b equals 10.2. So any length between 10.2 and 18.6. It can't be any length. If it was, it would not be a right triangle. It's going to be a, because if 15 was your hypotenuse, 10 is going to be your other leg, 10.2. And if these were your legs, your hypotenuse would be 18.6. It's a little tricky. Number 8, the lengths of two sides of a right triangle measure 13 inches and 18 inches. The length of the third side is between 13 inches and 18 inches. Which equation can be used to find that length? Okay, so we're needing to find the length. Let's just say 13 squared plus b squared equals 18 squared. 13, we're going to subtract 13 squared. We're just going to take it over. We're going to leave it the way it is. So b squared, since all of our answers are in squares, is going to equal 18, well, there you go, 18 minus 18 squared minus 13 squared. So, is there anything that looks familiar? Well, this one has the 18 minus 13. So, oh yeah, this one has a plus. So it's going to go with this one, but this is why the square root. They found the square root of b, so you have to find the square root of that answer. So that way it was b equals the square root of 18 squared minus 13 squared. It's a little different, problem solving, trying to get you to think outside the box and kind of think backwards. I always say there's more than one way to solve a problem. So just, use your head, use what you know, do the best that you can. Number 9. To the nearest tenth of a unit, what is the height of h of this isosceles trapezoid? To the nearest tenth, we always like that. Okay, if this is 18, and we know this part is 8, so in the middle, this right here would be 8. If I subtract 8 from 18, that gives me 10. I've got two identical sides. Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5. This, again, is the process of trying to get you to think outside the box. You have to problem solve. So now then, all we need to do is Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, if I want to label it, we have A, B, C. There's your right angle. Your C is always across from it, and it is also the longest side. So A squared would be 5 squared plus h squared, because we don't know what that is. So I just substituted h in there, would be 13 squared. 5 squared is 25 plus h squared equals 169. I need to subtract 25 to get it to my whole number. So h squared is by itself, and you have 144. But I can't have h squared as my answer. We have to find the square root, so h equals 12. Okay, number 10. A tent has a square floor that measures 9.6 feet on each side. There is a 10-foot zipper in the center of the front panel of the tent that runs from the top of the tent to the floor. The tent has a center support pole that is perpendicular to the floor, to the nearest tenth of a foot. Which of the following lengths are the length of the center pole? Okay, so if this is, all of it is 9.6, and we cut it in two because of the zipper, it means this side's going to be 4.8 and this one's going to be 4.8 because we just divided 9.6 by 2. So let's write the formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, let's go with, we're trying to find the a. B squared is going to be 4.8 squared equals 10 squared. So a squared plus 4.8 squared is going to be 23.04 equals 100. We're going to get the whole numbers together so we can get C by itself. Negative 2304, we're just subtracting it from both sides to solve our equation. Leaves you with a squared equals 76.96. However, we have to find the square root of a equals 8.77, but remember it said round to the nearest tenth of a foot. So this 7 is going to tell us to raise that 7. So it's going to be, and actually the only answer that really comes close is 8.8. So even if you made a mistake of rounding, it still is pretty obvious what your answer was. Okay, I'm running out of time. The last 3 problems you can do by yourself. If you have any questions, leave it on Google Classroom.